Welcome to Two Guys and Mike podcast. I'm Jason Thompson, your host, and come to you today again. I know it's unprecedented. We've come so many times this week to the podcast to bring you some information. Our federal government is failing our people down south. The media is showing it. Some of the media is showing it, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention as well. It's absolutely devastating what we're seeing in the Carolinas, specifically the Carolinas, the western part of the state. And I'm having a really hard time keeping quiet about it. You know, they had Joe Biden out there saying, oh, everything's good. People are happy. They're getting what they need. So we're going to cut in to the Fox News feed so you guys listen to what's going on. I think it's pretty damning as far as how the response is and what the reaction and the sentiment of the federal government and FEMA to what is going on. It's pretty sad, and we'll have you see it and tell us what you think.
Begin with this Fox News alert. The
Terrible
devastation from Hurricane Helene is more surreal than ever because the time that has passed.
Over a week.
The death toll is now climbing above 220 people. It's expected to grow as hundreds of people are still missing in areas that are so tough to get to. And that means that they're cut off from the life-saving things that they need.
Now, one of the big problems, guys, is that right now we're past a week. So people's medications are running out. People who are on oxygen, their backups are done. You know, food, water, all these things are running out. You know, we all prepare for a couple days, 24 hours, 40-hour bug-out kits. Well, we're at 7 days. 7 days. And some of these places have yet to even see a FEMA truck. They're relying on each other's neighbors, their communities. And it's unacceptable. This is unacceptable, guys. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say.
This is the deadliest storm to hit the mainland U.S. since Hurricane Katrina. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus.
I'm so glad that Harris Faulkner actually has been taking the charge on this. And kudos to her. Really kudos to her. Because nobody else is focusing how bad it is. I hate to keep interrupting, but it's terrible. I'm at a loss of words. Guys, donate if you can. I'm just so angry at the lack of response from the federal government.
The more our cameras can get in and show you this, and hopefully the more that people can get some of the help that they need, what they're dealing with becomes really clear.
It's crazy.
Tragic scenes from decimated communities are now in full view. President Biden has spent the last 2 days visiting hard-hit areas.
Wait till you hear this.
And he said this about the people in the middle of all of that. Watch it.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President? Okay. What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about.
I didn't know which storm you were talking about. The biggest storm of the century just happened. I didn't know what storm you're talking about. Come on, guys. Jesus Murphy.
They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board.
They're very happy across the board. I doubt any of those goddamn people are happy, stupid fuck. I can't. You know, I'm so glad I'm on blood pressure medication because how can you say that? They're happy. Some of these people haven't even seen FEMA since it began.
What is he talking about that they're happy? What does he mean that they're getting everything that they need?
Yeah.
What does he mean he doesn't know which storm we're talking about when we ask about Hurricane Helene? What is going on? People on the ground
That guy is oblivious. And where's Kamala Harris? Where is she? Why isn't she talking about this? Why doesn't she have feet on the ground and doing press conference and calling attention to things that aren't being put into place and people needing help? Where is she?
Certainly don't understand what he's talking about because their reality is hell. The New York Post is reporting Hurricane Helene victims in North Carolina in particular are fending for themselves as response from the Biden-Harris FEMA over.
And yet we're housing illegal immigrants in 5-star hotels all across the country. And they all have food. They all have shelter. They've paid nothing into our system. But that's the Harris and Biden priority.
Whelms. And people in those areas are not staying quiet.
I've lived here my entire life. I grew up, saw Hurricane Hugo, Fran, Floyd, the list goes on. Nothing compares to what has happened out there. We're pulling 15, 19-hour days, and I've seen two FEMA officials, no trucks, no trailers, no camp. That's really the truth right now, and I just cannot. I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe. I don't understand where our government is.
I think the one thing that stands out the most is even after it had been several days since it had happened, there still was no aid here at all. It's all community-based, essentially.
It's too late. I mean,
look at this guy. My heart goes out to him.
They took too long. It took them 5 days to get here. It's disgraceful. I mean, they keep saying we the people. No, there is no we the people. It's them versus us. So they're not for us.
How can you not listen to him and get angry? Get angry at the fact that the federal government of the United States has failed its people. I don't know. This is not right. It's not. This guy. My heart goes out to the kid. He looks. He's lost. He's lost faith in our country. Lost faith in the government. And Joe Biden. Oh, they're happy. They have everything they need. Oh, what storm are you talking about? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't.
Madison Scarpino is in North Carolina, about 10 miles from Asheville, Madison.
Harris, the majority of those deaths that you mentioned at the top of the show are here in North Carolina. We're in Swannanoa right now, one of the hardest hit areas. People who live here are describing some of this town as a war zone or apocalyptic. And when you look around, you can see why. Right now, we're standing on a lot that was home to about 4 or 5 mobile homes. We actually talked to the owner of the lot who was just there. He tells us that thankfully he got in touch with everyone who lives here when the floodwaters started coming up and they all got out safe. But he hasn't talked to them since they got out. And he tells us that, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of money and he doesn't know how they're going to recover from this. And this is one of the countless just terrifying and devastating stories we're hearing from people who live here. And when it comes to that federal help, we are hearing from residents that they have seen some FEMA people on the ground. Some people tell us that they haven't.
There should be convoys of FEMA trucks. The National Guard should be deployed there. Federal disaster emergency teams should be scouring every square inch of those places. Instead, it's neighbors helping neighbors. One community over sends their DPW to help the other community over. One state is sending their services at their own behest to help another state. The federal government is a failure, folks. They can do nothing. They're inept. They can't even solidify our borders. And this, in plain view, plain sight, for everybody to see how bureaucracy is just disgustingly unable to cope with anything. It's too slow. It's too big. This is why it has to be taken away from the federal government and given to the states. Destroy all these federal agencies and give it to the states. Save that money, give it to the people.
Heard from them or seen them themselves yet, but another person tells us that they have already applied for that federal aid, but they're not relying on that. When it comes to people cleaning up here, right now it's majority neighbors helping neighbors. Here's what one guy had to say.
The real heroes of this community are actually the community itself. It takes so long to get paper signed in Washington.
This is what kills me.
We've got boots on the ground here, actually.
In the background,
helping neighbors.
There's a deuce and a half right there. A military truck. And you can tell by the door, it's privately owned, being escorted by cops. And as it goes by, you can see it's got supplies and relief stuff. It's members of the community that are doing the work because the federal government isn't there. Thank God. Thank God that Americans are still builders and doers. And we're not all a bunch of cowering fools like there are in big cities and urban areas. Because if this were to happen anywhere else but in the mountains, where the rednecks live, the ones that we defend, that we're going to depend on when our country's attacked or when there's problems, they're the ones that are able to handle this. Could you imagine this in New York City? Could you imagine this in any big urban area? It would be absolute mayhem and disaster, chaos, riots, killings in the street. Because the federal government's not going to respond, folks. It's not going to be there for you. You have to rely on your neighbor. The neighbor doesn't talk to you because, well, Democrats don't like us to talk. I hate to bring politics into it, but this is what it's going to be. It's what it is. Everything is political today because they've created an atmosphere where it's red versus blue, left versus right, south versus north, divide and conquer. And this is another part of it.
Doesn't matter about anything but other than help. I mean, dump trucks going up, people bringing their excavators, getting people's driveways cleared out, getting muck cleaned up, getting our infrastructure back. These guys have worked since the storm started.
And Harris, right now, the number one need remains clean water. And the thing about some of these mountain communities, well water is very common. But even if people still have well water right now, they're being told not to drink it or use it because of the contamination. But we're going to be on the ground here all day and throughout the next few days, keeping you updated with everything. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Great reporting there. I want to bring in now a voice that we hear from during the storm, Ron DeSantis, Republican governor of Florida, where, of course, the effects of Hurricane Helene were hit first. His state took it first. And you're feeling it too, Governor. I want to start, though,
you can see the look of disgust on his face. I mean, he's disgusted at what's happening in North Carolina. Thank God that we have people like Ron DeSantis and governors like Ron DeSantis that don't rely on the federal government and take care of people in their states.
Have to, because it just seems surreal that the President of the United States would say that anyone is happy and that they have enough at this point, and that he was confused about which storm we mean. Your reaction?
Well, Harris, we obviously got the initial impacts of the storm. It was a Category 4 storm, but we prepared for it. We had tens of thousands of utility workers ready to go. We were able to facilitate 2.4 million power restorations in record time after a major hurricane. But we also, between state and local, conducted thousands of rescue missions as soon as the storm happened. So then we were in a situation where We got through Friday of last week, come in Saturday morning, and we didn't have a demand for rescue, but you saw in Western North Carolina, you saw people that were very desperate. So I authorized air assets, National Guard, State Guard, Highway Patrol to...
The state of Florida is spending its money to help the state of North Carolina. Well, why do we have a federal government? Oh, yeah, to make sure that we can have uncontrolled abortions. I forgot. It's not to save us or anything.
Go into Western North Carolina. So it created this odd circumstance that you have people there in Western North Carolina. And look, we've got a lot of Floridians that go there over the summer, so it wasn't like a random spot on the map for us. That's an important part of our state people where they go. But you have a situation where the first people that they come in contact with is some state guard unit from Florida and not any of the federal assets. So the reality...
There you go. You're being helped by Floridians, not by the federal government. Useless. I've said it before. The federal government is useless. And Donald Trump said it. Half those agencies should be abolished. Vivek Ramaswamy, 75% of federal employees should be fired because the bureaucracy is useless.
Is I don't think the federal assets were marshaled very quickly at all. But the lesson that I think people should take from this is one we learned in Florida long ago. We don't rely on FEMA to do any of that type of activity. We rely on FEMA to basically be a bank account. There's federal programs in place. We get our people qualified for individual assistance, reimbursement for some of the debris. But we take the matters into our own hands for the preparation and the rescue and response. And I just think it's sad that this has come to it. But I've got a lot of people up there now working. They're bringing food in. They're taking people back to safety. It is a really, really dire situation up there in the mountains. And the people that have been up there before, and I've been up there a number of times since I've been governor, and it's beautiful, but it is rugged. And if roads start blowing out or failing, you can't reach some of these communities unless you're putting in air assets, which we have been willing to do.
And look, part of that beauty is because it is so inaccessible. It has preserved the nature there, and I've seen it. I lived in that state more than once in my lifetime, North Carolina in particular. It is. But where the president was, and I want, you've shown so much leadership and your experience with the storm type of situation really shines. And you see Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, and you see others. You're having to do a lot of this on your own. So when you hear the President of the United States say that he doesn't, first of all, know which storm we're talking about as journalists when we ask about it, and then also that people are happy with what he's done, what is your reaction, Governor?
Well, I can tell you in Western North Carolina, the reports I'm getting, that's just not true. I mean, our guys are out there. People are desperate. They're very thankful that you have Florida assets that are there. I mean, we've got our Department of Transportation is up there. We brought 7,500 feet of temporary bridges. We're going to help repair bridges up there. Federal government's not doing any of that. But the reality is you just cannot, the federal bureaucracy, it's just not going to do the trick in these situations. And so we were able to do it. Interesting, Harris, in Florida, we conducted.
Could you imagine if DeSantis was our president right now? It would be a totally different story. A man who has a plan, a man who's a man of action. Donald Trump, a man of action, a man who's got a plan. Not what we have now. I'll tell you that. Not what we have now. Terrible.
Thousands of rescue missions as soon as the storm hit, a lot of it local, some joint, state and local, and other state. And all of those missions were successful. You know, we did have fatalities, but the people that were in dire straits that needed help, they got rescued and brought to safety.
And now you're able to help other states. I mean, and they really need it. I was on the radio with a station this morning for quite some time in North Carolina, and Governor, that it's grim. And they're finding their own way, not only to sustain, but to deal with the loss of life and to discover that on their own. I mean, it is heartbreaking. Look, this had a second layer until it seemed like late yesterday, and there was a collision point, again, with you at the center of it, unleashing the National Guard on a situation that really is the federal government's responsibility. A reprieve, at least for now. Dozens of ports during the port strike, which...
Well, now they're going off topic here. But it goes back to what I've been saying all along. Bad mismanagement at the federal level. Wrong priority, wrong focus. Guys, if what's happening all around the world between all these wars and these skirmishes wasn't enough to make you realize that the leadership of the Democrats, Harris and Biden, is bad, and if the border crisis and everything that's going on with migration wasn't bad to make you think twice, look at this storm disaster. There's no leadership. The storm came and Biden was on the beach sunning his nuts. And Harris was busy rubbing elbows with $1 million voter donors at campaign rallies while fellow Americans were dying, being swept away. I watched a video of a 70 to 80-year-old lady jumping out of her trailer that was being washed away by water. And thankfully, a neighbor sacrificed his life to swim out against the water, pluck her, and bring her back to shore to safety as he collapsed on the ground and of exhaustion. And Biden says people are happy. The young boy we just watched who looks absolutely physically, mentally, emotionally decimated. And this is who we're going to want for the next 4 years? This is the leadership that's in place now that we're going to elect for another 4 years? Folks, I mean, I understand you may not like Donald Trump because he says mean things. You may not like Donald Trump because you don't like the way he looks. You may not like Donald Trump because he's not articulate. You may not like Donald Trump because he goes down swinging because he believes in what he believes in. But God damn it, look at his policies. Look at the man's policies, not the man himself. We're voting on policies, not personalities. Having a president that's going to sit there and smile and say, joy, joy, happy, happy, lucky, lucky, isn't going to put food on my table, give me a good job, lower my rent, lower my housing, and make my life safe. Donald Trump did that. He had 4 years to show us he did that. Yeah, I'll be the first to say I didn't like the way he spoke. I couldn't use him as a character reference for my kids. I get that. The first time out in 2016, I was Gary Johnson because I wasn't going to vote for a Democrat for sure, especially not Hillary Clinton. And then in 2020, I was Jorgensen, the other libertarian, because I wasn't going to vote for Biden. But right now, we're at an inflection point in our country. We see the difference. We saw what we had in Donald Trump. Take COVID out of it. Remove COVID. Because COVID was an anomaly of life, a total anomaly. So remove COVID out of that, and you're going to have 3.5 years of the best economy, the most security, and everything that involved our life was great. And what have we had the last 3.5 years? Actually, 4.5 years, really. A high price of energy, high price of mortgages, high price in groceries, wars everywhere, Our streets are becoming unsafe. Our neighborhoods are becoming invaded by illegals and whatever you want to call them. Whatever word you want to use for people who don't belong here that came and snuck in the border, whatever. The fact of the matter is we are not better today than we were under Donald Trump. How many more examples do you need? Right down to the strike of the longshoremen. That should have never happened. The federal government should have stepped in and negotiated that before the strike happened. There is no forward thinking with this group of people. There is only reactive political playmanship. Which way can we get the most amount of votes? Makes no difference who it pisses off. And in the meantime, we the American people suffer. I don't want that country for my kids. I don't want that for my neighbors, whether they know it or not. Well, folks, you know, I'm at a loss. You know, yesterday I did a TikTok video, Two Guys and Mike podcast TikTok video. And it has come out that obviously FEMA's out of money because we're too busy spending money on illegal immigration. In the last 2.5 years, the federal government has spent $66 billion with a B dollars for housing, food, medical, schooling, and security for immigrants, illegal immigrants. And I put that out there. I was attacked, called a racist, a bigot, orange man lover. I was called fat and bald, whatever that reason is, because I was pointing out something that the government was doing that wasn't helping us out. It wasn't a political comment. It was a fact. You can pull it up off the Department of Homeland Security and the FEMA's and the State Department's websites. That's how much we spent. It's not a political game. It's a fact. And yet people are so entrenched in their beliefs that they won't see the truth. Guys, open your eyes. You've been given example after example after example, or evidence after evidence after evidence how inept Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the Democrats have been in handling real crises that have happened in the last 3.5 years. The Ukraine, we botched that. We're in a forever war there. Same thing's happening in the Middle East. Lack of leadership caused a vacuum. Somebody else filled it. Now there's a conflict in the Middle East. There's percolation between China and India and Taiwan. No leadership, there's a vacuum. At home, we have an unfettered invasion of our country at the southern border and the northern border due to illegal immigration. And our government is helping this out. And it's not going to do any good. And then on top of that, we're going to have further issues now with this storm. Guys, you got to open your eyes. I got to go because I just can't take it anymore. I'm going to start screaming and throwing shit. Till we meet again. We were great. We were free. Had a country that couldn't be beat. We were right